Well, hey everybody, and welcome to the Sunday Live chat. Just want to let you know that I'm going to be traveling a lot this week. I'm leaving on Wednesday, going to Carmel, California, for the launch of the new RAV4, and there's going to be a lot of interest in that vehicle. And I truly believe that the new RAV4, just what's on paper and looking at the other Toyota products, is going to be the compact utility to beat for overall packaging, and we'll get the price this week as well. Then I fly from Carmel, California to San Antonio, Texas for the launch of the GLE. Had a lot of people asking about the GLE, so we'll have video on that as well. Now, the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because I don't fly back from the GLE until the 11th. That's next Sunday, and so next week I will not be doing a live show. Plus, it's also Remembrance Day here in Canada. So we're live this week, not next week, the 11th, but back the following week, all right? And then after that, I go to Spain to drive the updated Audi R8. And there's one more trip before the end of the year, and that's probably going to be to drive an electric car far away. So we'll have to wait and see. I am not going to the LA Auto Show, as far as I know. Mike Gurr is from the channel. He's going to be down there, so we'll get his input on what's new down at the LA show. Okay, a couple of things. We're getting great traction on this on Instagram. Go to Instagram and type up Motormouth_auto. Follow along there. And Facebook is, you type into Facebook Car, which is the Facebook page. And I put lots of news and information. For example, it was the end of the month. All the new cars have come out in October. What were the sales? Stuff like that. All right, let's get into the questions. That's why everybody's here. The first one is, hey Zach from beautiful Montreal, is there something less expensive than the Outlander PHEV with the same practicality in the next year? Interestingly is, I had the PHEV a week ago. We were shooting for the TV show I do called Driving Television, and getting a chance to drive it again. I think it's the third or fourth time I've driven it. And it's a really good product. I think Mitsubishi did a fantastic job with the PHEV. Even when you run out of battery after, I can't remember what it is, 50 kilometers or so, even if it just drives in hybrid mode, it's an excellent utility. So is there going to be something that is going to compete with that right out of the box? Well, there is rumor that the RAV4, of course, they're going to have a hybrid. They might have a plug-in hybrid, so we'll have to wait and see. But right now, if you're looking for a utility vehicle, that is the best one, and it's the right size. Like the Kona Electric, Mike was in California getting a chance to drive it, but the Kona is really about the same size as the Chevy Bolt. It's not really a true utility vehicle. It's front-wheel drive. It isn't all-wheel drive. With the Outlander, you get real all-wheel drive. Hey Zach, when are you going to put on a review of the Corvette ZR1 or ZR1? Cheers from Vancouver. We have an issue here on the West Coast with our press fleet. We don't get a lot of those high performance cars. I've said to General Motors, hey listen, I don't need to drive another Buick. I need, like, can I get a Camaro? Can I get a Corvette? So yeah, that's an issue. I'll bring it up with them again. Matt says, hey Zach, would the new RDX be a good value when compared to the Macan? These are like total apples and oranges, okay? You can't compare an RDX to a Porsche Macan, even though they have their sport utilities, and you know the RDX is a little bit bigger. Now you're looking at a brand that is much higher in terms of desirability and you know, just overall appeal in the marketplace with the Porsche product. It's like, why would you say to your wife, would you like a Louis Vuitton handbag, or should I just go to the department store and get you one for 50 bucks? Like they're both handbags and they both do the same thing. Why would somebody spend money on a Rolex versus a Timex? There's heritage, there's perceived value, it's luxury. You pay for luxury, and a Macan is a luxury product. Yes, you could go and get a better comparison is to get the Audi Q5, but no, the RDX is a different product. It's a premium product. The Macan, it's a luxury product. Maybe not in actual terms of feel and finish. It's perceived luxury. Is it a fair comparison? No, it's not a fair comparison. And you ask about quality and performance. I would say actually probably performance-wise, if you're just talking about straight acceleration, the RDX might actually be quicker. I'd have to look at the numbers. Ryan Lee says, Tiguan, Forester, CX-5, and CX-9 Ascent Atlas for keeping 5 to 10 years. Okay, so Forester is brand new. Ascent is brand new. CX-9 has a new turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. CX-5 has been around for a long time. Tiguan is fairly new, and Atlas is fairly new. So what is the track record of these vehicles going to be over the next 5 to 10 years? Well, you have to look historically. What you don't have in there is a Toyota product. And if it was a Toyota, I would say the Toyota is the one you're going to get. And you should probably look at a Highlander in there as well. The Atlas, the engine is actually one of the strongest of the bunch because they have the old VR6 engine in there. And it has proven to be a real workhorse of an engine. Not as sophisticated as some of the newer vehicles, not as fuel efficient, but a real workhorse. So it's really hard to say 5 to 10 years out. They're all, you know, most people would lean towards Japanese products, but the interesting thing is two brands from Japan that don't score the highest in terms of quality scores from independent sources are both Mazda and Subaru. They have great brand appeal, but the actual numbers don't back it up. So looking at your list, it's hard to say. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you. Josh says, my brother drove from Montreal to Boston, around Boston and back to Montreal in 1 tank of diesel in his Range Rover Sport. Amazing. I'm a big believer in diesel vehicles, especially in utility. So this is a big, heavy Range Rover Sport, and diesels offer amazing fuel economy. We have a diesel Cayenne, and I'm driving it in the city, and I'm getting amazing fuel economy, like 8-9 liters per 100 kilometers in a big utility vehicle. Now, I don't want people to confuse two things, okay? We have so much focus on reducing carbon into the atmosphere. The measure of carbon is just clearly how much fuel you use. So if you use less fuel, you're putting less carbon into the atmosphere, which is one measurement. A totally separate measurement, and not to be confused, is low-level pollutants, like nitrous oxide, soot, particulate matter that comes out of the tailpipe. That's what causes smog. That's what causes people with asthma to have issues, and that is very different from CO2. It's ironic I have to cough while I say asthma, because I do have kind of asthma. So don't confuse those two things. And if you want to reduce CO2 into the environment and you want to drive a big utility vehicle, diesels really are the way to go. Which is why in Europe, they were promoting diesels so heavily over the last 20 years because they wanted to reduce the amount of CO2. Now they're backtracking on diesels because of the other part of it, the pollution. So they're going to try and push everybody towards electric vehicles, but same thing again. If you're going to do a round trip from Montreal to Boston and back in a diesel, you'll get amazing fuel economy. Shane says, BMW E38 7 Series generation, future classic, most desirable 7 Series generation. Well, this is near and dear to my heart because I had one of those cars. I had the 740 IS, that was the short wheelbase with the M parallel wheels on it. It was the one that was used in James Bond. James Bond drove a 7 Series. I can't remember which James Bond it was, but the 7 Series was the Bond car of the late 90s. And I had one. I had a 2001, the very last year it was made, 2001 BMW 740 IS. Absolutely loved it. It was not reliable. And my wife with 2 young kids said, get rid of it. So we got rid of it and got an X3. Is it a future collectible? Big, large sedans are not particularly collectible. I mean, you'd have to wait a long, long time to get a future classic out of that. And you look at, like, is anybody collecting mid-80s, big, large Mercedes sedans? I really don't think so. So my short answer is I don't think so. Hey, Zach, what are your thoughts on the reliability of Hyundai vehicles? Are they good? Are they on par with the Japanese? A traditional automatic transmission feel more reliable than a CVT? Well, there are some brands that do some reliable CVTs, and there are some brands that have had issues with them. I mean, you just look up the reliability scores for the Pathfinder, for example, and there's a long list of people who've had issues with that, and it has a CVT. Now, there are other brands that have had pretty good success with CVTs. Toyota is one brand that has done a good job. So there you go. Like, is Hyundai on the same par as, now it depends which Japanese brand you're talking about. I just talked about two brands that are actually lower in quality scores, and they're from Japan, and that's Mazda and what was the other one? Subaru. But people really like driving those cars. So yes, if you look at the quality scores over the last 5 years from Kia and Hyundai, they have just been on a trajectory like this. Independent studies, Consumer Reports, JD Powers, and others. So yes, they're producing some excellent cars. Are they on the same level as the Japanese counterparts? It depends which Japanese counterparts. If you're comparing to Toyota and Lexus, I would say probably not. If it's you know, Mazda and Subaru, yeah, I think they are just as good. Zach, your thoughts on the Toyota CHR. Now, interestingly, when we were in Quebec, we were driving in Mont-Tremblant. What was the car? The Corolla hatchback. Fun little car. They did a nice job on it. They showed us the CHR, the 2019 model. And, you know, credit where credit is due. Toyota took the criticisms that we gave them. We were on the CHR launch a year or so earlier than that. And if you go and watch my initial review of the CHR, you know, I said it drove well. It's built on that new Toyota global platform, which is used for the Camry. It's going to be used for the new RAV4. It's used for the new Prius. And it's actually, and the Corolla and the Avalon. The Avalon's a great handling car. So yes, it handles well. It's got a 2-liter engine. It's got all of that. What they really dropped the ball on was the in-dash technology. The head unit was really old and antiquated. They didn't have a backup camera. It had a tiny little backup camera in the rearview mirror. So for 2019, they've cleaned all that up. They've reconfigured the dash. They put a proper head unit in there, backup camera. It's going to have Apple CarPlay. Hopefully with the Entune suite, they're going to be able to add Android in the future. And they fixed a lot of the issues. So yeah, great. Now, if you just look at straight ergonomics, the back seat of the CHR is a little bit claustrophobic because of the slope of the roof and the shape of the door. So try it out. If you're just driving it as a single person, yeah, not a problem. Not all-wheel drive. But the one vehicle I always talk about, the Kia Soul has been sold. The Soul has been sold for many years now, and it's been a bestseller in its class, and it's only been front-wheel drive, and people buy that thing in droves. So yeah, a front-wheel drive utility-like vehicle, there is a place for that. When do you expect Blazer price in Canada? I don't know. You know, I think you have to. I don't know. Sorry. Jordan, hello from Montreal. Great show. Any thoughts on the Ford Edge? Are you talking about the new ST? Is that the vehicle you're talking about? They've had a lot of hype around it over the last couple of weeks, but I'll have to wait until I drive it. My issue with Ford, and you're starting to see this now in the US and in Canada, Ford is struggling with some sales. Their share price is in the crapper, and in my opinion, they need to really invest wholeheartedly. A lot of research and development dollars is for interiors. Their interiors are shockingly stark and plastic filled. You know, you get in any of their products and they just don't seem premium. And you get for example, what's one I can think of? You get into the new Kia products, the new Hyundai products, and they have interiors that are like, bam, how do you like me now? But you get in a Ford and it's like cheap, hard plastic. That's what they need to invest in. They need to also bring out vehicles that are the right size. For example, the Ford Escape, I know this in the Canadian market, it was never the same in the US, but in the Canadian market, the Ford Escape was the best-selling compact utility up until about 3 years ago. RAV4 and CR-V have blown it out of the water with new products and new products coming again from Toyota. They came out with what they called a new Ford Escape 2 years ago. It was the same car. So they need to really up their game with the right packaging and especially interiors. Bruce says, looking to replace my older Outback with possibly a VW All-Track. Is that a good replacement? Looking for a smaller regular gas wagon. I think, yeah, absolutely. Now, you don't have to get an All-Track. You can just get a regular sport wagon, a Golf sport wagon. By the way, I was in Puebla, Mexico this week and they gave us this little thing. That's pretty cool, eh? Look at that. That's a little Beetle there because they're launching the very last year of the Beetle, and there's going to be a video coming out in a couple of days. But they had a factory tour, and this is the vehicle that they took us around. This is a Volkswagen Golf sport wagon with the roof cut off, and they put a third row of seats in the back. It was so cool. So anyway, that's just a little sidetrack. So the Volkswagen Beetle video will be coming out in the next few days. Now, You don't have to get an all-track. You can just get a regular sport wagon. A sport wagon is available with all-wheel drive. It's a great package. My dad has one. He's got a sport wagon, all-wheel drive. He's got the Highline, and he loves it. So that's something to consider. And I think it's a great alternative to an Outback if you want something. Now, the one thing you're going to notice is there's, the Outback is a CVT, and you're going to go into a regular torque converter transmission. If you get the all-track, you can get the dual clutch, which makes it a little bit more lively. But yeah, I think that's a great choice, and it's really good in the snow. Dale says, hey Zach, what's your take on the diesel Chevy Equinox? Does it have enough power to be a great road trip crossover? That is exactly what I think this vehicle excels at. The Escape has a smaller engine. What is the size of it? 1.6, 1.5, something like that. It's a small displacement diesel engine. Stoplight to stoplight maybe wouldn't be my choice. But if you're somebody that does a lot of highway driving, for example, maybe you lived in Barrie, Ontario, and you drove every day into Toronto, or from Chilliwack into Vancouver, or wherever it is, right? And you did long highway drives. That would be a really good vehicle to get great fuel economy. It has the best highway fuel economy of any utility vehicle sold in the market. Take away an electric car, even better than hybrids. It gets better fuel economy on the highway than the Toyota RAV4 hybrid. So that's something to chew on. Not the best vehicle, like I said, from stoplight to stoplight. But if you're doing long mileage in it, I think it would be fine. Charles says, what do you think of the Infiniti Q50 Red Sport? Interesting you should bring this up. I was at an event this weekend with some neighbors, and my neighbor has that exact car, loves it. Now, I can go in there and nitpick things. I think the head unit's slow. The two-screen thing is not the best. Some parts of the vehicle look a little bit dated. But here's a neighbor of mine who absolutely loves the car. He can't believe that he's got 400 horsepower, and he thinks it's an absolute steal in the marketplace, and he loves it. So I was one of the outliers. If you go back and you watch my review I did of the Q50 from years ago, I was one of the very few journalists that actually didn't mind the electric power steering or the drive-by-wire power steering. I thought it was actually pretty good. So here's the thing. These cars are not selling particularly well. There's nothing wrong with the car. It's got some antiquated technology in the dash. Now, if you can live with that, I think you could go and carve yourself a good deal. Okay, here's a perfect example of what I want to talk about. Car Cost Canada now sponsors the channel. You might have seen some of the new videos with the Car Cost Canada logo at the beginning. Now, I have done work with Leasebusters over the years, and Leasebusters, a person involved in Leasebusters, also owns Car Cost Canada. This is a perfect example of what this product is, and I really didn't know much about it until I started talking about it. When I found out more about it, I thought to myself, this is a no-brainer. Anybody that's shopping for a car should use this system. You go to Car Cost Canada and you look up the Q50, okay? What you're gonna get, the first search, by the way, is free, okay? And then I think you get 5 additional searches for $50, but it's worth your money because you're going to get the cost of the car. That's what the dealer paid for the car. Any additional rebates, say Infiniti's got $4,000 off, or they've got a discounted interest rate of 1.9%, or there's some secret money that's on the table, and sometimes that's not off, that isn't offered to the public. Then you also get things like, if you're a student, or you're a first-time buyer, or you're disabled, or you're military. There's lots of discounts. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with this product, but those kinds of things are out there. So you go to Car Cost Canada, excuse me, and you look it up, and then you're going to be able to find that. So what do I think of the Q50? I think it's a great car, but I think it's an even better car if you can get a good deal on it. And I think because they're not selling that well, I think you can. And I bet you if you look it up, there will be some rebates on it. Clarkson says, hey Zach, how's it going? Got a question regarding winter driving. I have a 2015 Mustang, and I wonder if a set of winter tires would make it to work in snow or need another vehicle. And I live in Vancouver. Yeah, you have no issue. Spend the money, get good winter tires. Don't get these cheap Chinese import tires, go to the favorites out there. You're going to go to Michelin, you're going to go to Bridgestone, you're going to go to Toyo, you're going to go to Hankook, you're going to go, and there's quite a few big reputable brand names. What you're paying for with those brands is you're paying for the research and development that goes into the tires. So yes, absolutely. If you have a 2015 Mustang with good winter tires and use your brain, yeah, you'll be able to get it. And if it's, hey, listen, if it's really coming down and there's lots of snow, take the bus that day. It's sure cheaper than buying another car. Ganesh says, hey Jack, I drive an 11 Nissan Altima 2.5. What should I be careful to drive it for 5 more years without any trouble? This is where you need to go and see your mechanic, whoever your regular service guy is, and say, go through the car. Tell me where I am with this car. Is the transmission seeping oil? Is the engine seeping oil? Are there issues? Are you starting to see some things come up? Now, some of the weak points of that car, reportedly over the last while have been the CVT, for example. But yeah, I mean, if you look after a car and you maintain it properly and you put the money in on a regular basis, you should be able to drive any car absolutely indefinitely. And often, not often, but every once in a while, you will get a year that pops up where you spend, quite a bit of money on the car. But if you average it out over the years that you're going to drive it, it is still often cheaper to keep a car and repair it than to buy a new one, just based on taxes and the money you're going to lose by trading it in and all those sorts of things. So go on the advice of your mechanic is my best advice to you. I would venture most of your viewers are American. Why not give the price of the cars in miles per gallon in both Canadian and American? Well, you know what? Here's the reality. I live in the Canadian market. I had the channel used to be called Motormouth Canada, but then I realized that it was kind of discriminating against me. Americans discriminating against me because I'm Canadian. So I got rid of the Canada. But here's the thing is, I'm not doing reviews for people without an internet connection. Anybody can look up the miles per gallon and the price of a car. I mean, that takes 2 seconds. If you're interested in a 2018 Nissan Altima, go to nissan.com. 2 seconds, you look it up. I mean, it's not that hard. So yeah, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, but there you go. Par says, hey Zach, could you please make more for your consideration videos on used sports cars? I have to do this. My friend who has the dealership, the boutique dealership that sells these cars, I have to go. It all comes down to time. I have so little time as it is now, but yeah, point well taken. Bruno says, hey Zach, my wife and I are looking for a hot hatch, and we are looking for the Golf R, GTI, Civic Type R, with volume knob, and the Veloster N. Let me know which one is the best buy. Okay, the best value is the Veloster N. Okay, it's $35,000 in the Canadian market. I think it's around 31 in the US market. It's fully loaded. It has the most horsepower of that group, except for the Golf R and the Type R, which are more expensive. All those sorts of things. Okay, what it doesn't have is it doesn't have the shape that makes it more practical. It's the Veloster, which the third door on the curb side, the cargo area isn't as big, all those things. So is that important to you? What are you going to be using it for? So if you're looking for just straight functionality, the Civic and the Golf are going to be the ones you can choose because they've got a square roof, bigger cargo area. If it's only just to drive, the Veloster N is the best value of the bunch. But one vehicle that you should consider is the GTI base model, which starts around $31,000. So it is less expensive than the Veloster N, but it doesn't have nearly as much equipment. If it was me and I was buying a car in that set, now I don't know how old you are. At my age, I wouldn't want to be seen in a Civic Type R. I think it's a ridiculous looking car with the big wing in the back, but that's because I'm not 22 anymore. If I was 22, I'd probably think it was awesome. Maybe not. But yeah, so if it's based on price, Veloster N. If it's not based on price, Civic Type R probably is the one, and the Golf R for just outright driving dynamics. Bitter says, hi, it's nice to see you live. A question, what's reliable, the GLC 300 or the Lexus RX 350? If you're just going on historical data and you look at all of the different studies that are done, the Lexus, okay? But Mercedes has upped their game in the last few years. They had a real dip in quality over the last few years, but they're starting to get it back. But if you're just looking at absolute reliability, go buy the Lexus. Akash says, hey Zach, big fan. Just want to know, should I go for a brand new car or a 17-16 car? Thanks. Well, here's the thing is that a lot of cars, and I know this for the, well, I guess we're going to talk about Canada because I live in the Canadian market and I follow it more closely, is that used car prices are really high. One major factor is the Canadian dollar is low. And a lot of people are coming up to the auctions from the US and using their more powerful American dollar to buy these Canadian cars and ship them down to the US. And that's something, some Americans might not be aware of, but, there's about, I think it is 300,000 cars a year are going into the US that were originally registered in Canada. Not that big a deal unless it's, a car's got a lot of salt on it. But anyway, when you start crunching the numbers, and you start looking at a car that's a year or 2 years old, you're not going to get the reduced interest rate. Okay, that's one thing where you're going to probably go to a bank, for example, and you're going to take a loan on a car. Say it's $15,000 or $20,000. You're going to be paying 6, 7, 8%. Okay. What the car companies do is they pay down the interest, and you can still in some instances get 0% interest, 2%, 3% interest. That is cheap money, and paying for the car over the long run with a reduced rate actually saves you money. The other thing to consider is if you're a person that leases, then you can get more car for your monthly payment. And a lot of people aren't buying cars, they're buying payments, and that's why leasing is a way to go for so many people. But what I want you to do is, if you have a car in mind, shop for the car in the used market, a year or 2 years old, and also shop for it new. Same thing again, Car Cost Canada, you can go and you can find out what the dealer paid for the car, what discounts there are in the car, any rebates, any reduced interest rates, all of those secret rebates that you can find, and plus you get the full warranty and all that kind of stuff. So it's something to consider. You have to get out the spreadsheet and do some math. Would a Dodge Charger, could you please review the Dodge Charger GT? I was wondering about the performance during winter. Well, the Charger, is the GT available with all-wheel drive? The Charger is available with all-wheel drive. And back to my point about the Mustang. You put good winter tires on a car and you can drive it. Yeah, it's a big car. It's built on that old Mercedes E-Class platform. You put good winter tires on it with traction and stability control and you use your brains. Sure, you could drive in the winter. Pablo says, how can we get VW Canada attention about changing options or have the ability to choose like panoramic sunroofs with all-track and sport wagon? I'm guessing you don't want the panoramic sunroof because when you go to the different trims, they add it in there. And I'm kind of with you on that. I wish you could just delete it. What I would suggest you do is get in touch with your dealer and see if you can if they're able to do an order without the packages, like they have the different trim lines. But I'm with you on that. I'm not a big fan of, I don't like sunroofs, period. And I'm not a big fan of panoramic roofs. And of course, my car has a panoramic roof because we bought the car. It was the only one we could get. So we had to take it with the pano roof. So I'm with you on that. Canada in the world is a small country, okay? The volume of cars that we buy from Volkswagen internationally, but from the factory in Puebla where those cars are made, or from Germany where the Golf R is made, is small. Okay, so they don't have the flexibility to have all of these different iterations of the cars. So that's what it is. You get to a much bigger market like the United States or Europe, then they have the ability to offer more options. I agree with you. I wish you could get it without. Hey, Zach, do you think Hyundai will bring the i30N to North America, or is the Veloster? We asked about that when we were down there, and as it stands now, there is no plan, but I think that they are going to be bringing out they are going to update the Elantra GT hatchback. And that's really what the i30N is. They were kind of cagey on that. They're saying they're going for a Veloster N for the North American and Asian market and the i30N for the European market. But I don't see why they couldn't sell both, especially if the Veloster sells well. And that's back to the point about, you know, the Golf GTI versus the Veloster N. It's just a better package. You know, you get a proper hatchback car with a proper 4 doors and a proper size. It's a much more practical car. I wish they would do it, but they're focusing on Veloster for this market. At their peril, I think, because, you know, the new Golf is going to be coming next year and there'll be a new GTI and who knows what they're going to do. So we'll have to wait and see. Hey, Zach, can I get a Jaguar F-Pace 35T R Sport or a BMW X3 M40 for 70 grand, which is better? Well, so you get the supercharged 6-cylinder in the Jag, or you get the inline twin turbo 6-cylinder, or is it twin scroll? Anyway, you get the turbocharged inline 6-cylinder in the M430. If I was choosing between the two, it would be BMW. The F-Pace now is a few years old. I think 3 or 4 years old now, 3 years old. The interior was the weak point for me, okay? And I've been on record of saying that I think BMW has dropped the ball with not updating their interiors. But if you're just looking at just straight materials and the way that the cars are put together, there is no comparison. I think that the BMW has a much higher quality interior. Excuse me. Like, for example, from the door, from the, you know, the knees down, it's all hard plastic in the Jag. The BMW still has soft touch materials, and it does have the newest and the latest iDrive system, which is so easy to use. So, but what's the horsepower difference? Is it 340 and 380? I still get the BMW. But, you know, the Jag is a nice car. But for me, it comes down to the interior. Fabio says, hey, Zach, I have the new CX-5 all-wheel drive. Should I get winter tires? Depends on where you live. And don't think just because you have all-season tires, you have winter tires. You have 3-season tires. I am a big believer. When you buy a new car, do yourself a favor and also buy a separate set of wheels and tires if you have space to store them in the off-season. Now, some dealers will store the tires for you. So I'm not sure exactly where you are, but there's nothing like driving on winter tires. If you've never driven on winter tires and then you put somebody on winter tires and let them go out in the snow and the ice, it's a life-changing event because you have so much more control. So you've invested all this money on a new car, just go that little bit farther and get some good winter tires. Hamed says, love your show from Sydney, Australia. G'day, mate. What is it? What's it there? Middle of the day? You can write back below. It was almost exactly 2 years ago I was in Sydney, Australia. We went there for the very last WRC rally in Coffs Harbour. Coffs Harbour. It was so great. So yeah, Sydney's a great place. Joe M says, hey Zach, I'm looking for BMW 2 Series as a summer sports car. Is the 235i worth the premium over the 228? Hell yeah, absolutely. Back to that inline 6-cylinder, that BMW. They built their whole brand around that engine, and I think it's just one of the best engines, period, that's been made over the last, the last number of years. So yeah, if you can afford it, get the 235. Here's an interesting thing. One of my colleagues had an X3 with the inline 6-cylinder. And he was shocked by how good the fuel economy was. BMW does a really good job with that inline 6-cylinder by getting really efficient. And if you're not into the throttle all the time, you can actually get pretty good fuel economy out of it. But it is a game changer going from the Turbo 4 to the inline 6. Nicholas, from what I understand, there is MSRP and invoice, and the dealers sell the car to you at invoice price. They still make money because the manufacturers give dealers bonuses. Is this true? Well, this can be true for sure. And what Nicholas is getting at is sometimes dealers won't make much money on a car because they have quarterly bonuses from the manufacturer. BMW is famous for this. If you sell a whole crap load of cars in that 3-month period, they get written a check. So they're not making the car on the individual unit, they're getting it back from the manufacturer. So that's why when you go in and you start doing some searches and you're trying to get the best deal on a car, you really should go in armed. You should know what the cost of the car is for the dealership, which brings me back to Car Cost Canada, thankfully a sponsor of the channel. And doing more research into this, it's really fascinating to see what's available to you. So if you go and you sign up and you do, the first search is free. Find the specific car you're looking for. You will get the dealer's cost, what they paid for the car. That's very powerful information for you, right? So you know exactly what the dealer paid for it. Well, that's a great negotiating tool. Then you know if there's any rebates. Hey, there's $2,000 off this month. Oh, by the way, you might be able to lease or buy the car for like 1.9% interest. Okay, that's good. Okay, you're a first-time buyer. Oh, they're going to give you another $500 off. I'm just using examples. Hey, maybe you're a veteran or whatever. There's all kinds of things that are in there. And sometimes with all the rebates and discounts, it's actually less money than the actual dealer cost. And if you don't want to go to the dealer and do the negotiating for it, they can actually help you do it. So check it out. So yes, the long answer is dealers can make money on volume at the end of the quarter. Par says, your recommendation for a weekend track car with manual, best car for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Track car. I think the best weekend car with a manual transmission is MX-5 Miata. Now, don't roll your eyes and laugh until you've driven one. Now, everybody goes, oh, Zach, that's a chick car. What would I want to drive a Miata for? Because you've never driven one. Once you've driven a Miata, you go, oh, I get all the hype that everybody's been talking about for, 30 years. Do yourself a favor and go drive one. Then you start getting into more expensive cars. Like, if you could be able to afford a used Cayman, that would be a hell of a car in the $45,000 range. But yeah, MX-5 Miata all day long. Justin says, looking at a 17 Nissan Murano, is there anything I should be looking at or anything else? The thing about the Murano is that it is a really good value vehicle. You get a premium experience in the car without paying a premium for it. So it has a very smooth, relaxed, comfortable ride. It's got that edgy look on the outside. The seats are comfortable. The in-dash technology isn't that new, but it works. It's got a 6-cylinder. It's got a continuously variable transmission. It gives you a sort of quasi-luxury feel without the luxury price. Now, the obvious contender to that vehicle would be Lexus RX or an NX and the new RDX. But please get the vehicle inspected before you buy it, because there have been issues with the V6 engines and the continuously variable transmission from Nissan. So please check into that. Gabrielle says, what do you think about the 19 ILX A-Spec? It's interesting you bring this up because I've had a few questions about this because they have updated the car and now they're putting A-Spec across the Acura line. They're even doing an MDX A-Spec. And I'm going to be teeing up some Acura cars here in the next little while. And it's not a car I typically would have picked to test drive because it's a small segment, but I think I'm going to try and get my hands on it. But yeah, I don't really know. It's a Civic-based car, but it has the ability, you can get the dual clutch transmission and a more powerful engine. I think it's the SI engine, a nicer looking trim, and the A-Spec I think does make a big difference. Then you have to start carving out what the price is. Okay, so if you look at a touring Civic versus an ILX, how much of a difference is there for you to justify the price? Cars Channel says, bonjour from Quebec. Bonjour back. Punjabi Mafia 12, pretty cool handle there. What would you say to someone to convince them into buying a Veloster N over the Golf GTI? Okay, well, I'll play devil's advocate with you. Why? I'll take both sides of this argument. Why should you buy a GTI over a Veloster N? I'll start with that one first. More practical shape, long history. The original hot hatch was the GTI, started in the mid 70s. Still one of the most functional cars, regardless if it's a GTI or just a Golf generally. It's still a wonderfully practical car. Simple, clean execution on the inside, nice modern head units with Apple and Android, and a car that has just been polished over the decades, and it works. It does everything well. It uses regular gas. Now I'm going to flip it on its head. Why should you get a Veloster M? More horsepower, more standard features, good value for the money, and a fun car with some practicality. So the negatives for both. The Veloster N is not that practical compared to the Golf. The interior is riddled with hard plastic. Watch my regular Veloster Turbo review I did about a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. So watch the Veloster Turbo review. The car's filled with hard plastic. It only has one door on the one side to get into the back seat. The cargo isn't as big, and that's really the downfall of the car. Now the downside for the GTI, less powerful. Oh, but the other thing about the Veloster, and it needs premium gas. The downside of the Golf GTI, well, it's at the end of its run. There's going to be a new Golf coming. There's criticisms that it's a bit dull. It isn't boy racer enough. And the upside for the Golf is you can get one for 31 grand. The GTI, you don't have to get the Autobahn edition. So there's a bit of pro and con in both. Clarkson, Zach, do you have any information about whether the new Kia 900 will come to Canada? I don't know, but it's such a low volume car. I bet you they sold dozens. That's about it. A Kia K900 is the big limo-like sedan. It was kind of nice to drive. We'll have to wait and see if they do. Did you, if the price of the Jeep, I don't know what you're saying. Sorry. Oceanic Flight. Zach, what's your opinion on the GMC Terrain, preferred engine and trim? I really like the 2-liter turbo. I thought it was great. The engine was fantastic. It all comes down to what's your pain threshold for price. I think that you need to go and drive it. They're certainly on the dealer's lots. Go and drive one, see which one you like. The 2-liter turbo was the test unit I drove, and then I drove the diesel. Try the diesel. It's definitely an efficient engine. It's been used around the world. It's one of the few utilities you can actually get a diesel. So give it a shot. Turbo 4 and the new Mazda 6, not the CX-9. The Turbo 4 is new to the Mazda 6, not the CX-9. No, what I was saying earlier is that the turbo in the CX-9 is new to that size utility vehicle. So I think the CX-9 came out 2 years ago. It's still a turbo 4-cylinder in a large utility product. So the point I was making with all of those vehicles is they're all relatively new. It's not like they had the 6-cylinder, the 3.5-liter 6-cylinder in the CX-9 for years. That's an old engine that we can actually track the long-term reliability of it. The CX-9 with the turbo is relatively new. It's been out for just a couple of years. So what's the 10-year reliability going to be like on it? We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Matt says base Macan is $55,000. Top model RDX is $55,000. Both are compact crossovers. In terms of reliability, maintenance cost, performance, handling, interior, quality, and features, not badge snobbery. Okay, I'll play your game. So which one do you think it is? Not badge snobbery. Reliability, maintenance cost, performance, handling, interior, quality, and features. Well, I think that if you have to actually probably give the nod to Porsche in terms of reliability, because they have scored extremely well on reliability and durability studies over the last 10 years. And that engine has been around. The 2-liter turbo has been around a long time. Now, performance, I think probably it's a bit of a push when it comes to the actual straight line performance. Handling, I would definitely give the hand to the Porsche. Interior quality, I would give it a tie. I think the RDX in some ways has a nicer interior, definitely more showbiz. And features, you're definitely going to get more for your money out of a fully loaded RDX than you are a base model Macan. So then it comes back to my initial point. It comes down to badge appeal. And the RDX is bigger. So there you go. Martin says, what's your take on the new Nissan Leaf for a commuter? Never owned an electric car before and test drove one the other day and was blown away by how quiet and smooth it is to drive. 240 kilometers is plenty for me. Absolutely. That's the great thing about electric cars. You get a very smooth and quiet, relaxing ride. And for most people, that's all you really need. And 240 kilometers of range is way more than the average commuter is going to use. And the great thing about owning an electric car is every morning when you wake up and you unplug it, it's like having a full tank of gas. So if you like it, drive it. And there was somebody sent me a video the other day on Facebook. Speaking about Facebook, go over to the Facebook page. It's Facebook Cars, and like the page, and you get all the information and studies and things, articles that I like to post on there. And Instagram is Motormouth_cars. So those are two things if you could do that. But because it's got a smaller battery pack than, say, a big, 300 or 400 kilometer range car, it's less harmful to the environment. And if you don't need all that range, absolutely. My issue with the latest Leaf is it didn't change in size. The back seat is kind of small, and so is the cargo area. But if you're okay with that, have at it. That's a good price as well. Nana says, what's your suggestion for a new 6-passenger vehicle with captain seats? All-wheel drive is a must. I have a budget up to $55,000. I would consider an SUV, even minivans. I consider SUVs even minivans. There's so many choices, dude. There's so many. I think that one of the best vehicles for best bang for the buck, value, reliability, resale value, all of that is the Toyota Highlander. I think it's a great product. And you have captain's chairs. It's funny, we went out to dinner with some friends on Friday night. They picked us up in their Highlander. My wife and I sat in the back seat. It's not very often I sit in the back seat. Huge, absolutely massive amounts of room. So that's one to consider. DJ, this is another great handle. DJ Pleasure Seeking Missiles. Hey, Zach, how was your trip to Puebla? Any updates on the VW pickup truck? We are not getting the Amarok, and they were there. They were sitting there because they sell them in Mexico and other parts of Central and South America. So, by the way, we got to go down to Puebla, Mexico, to the factory where they make the Volkswagen Beetle, because 2019 is going to be the last of the Beetle. I suspect, and you'll see the video coming up the next couple of days, is that there will be an electrified car that looks like a Beetle at some point. I think Volkswagen has invested so much money in electrification. It's the icon car. I think they're going to do it. Puebla, by the way, is the second largest manufacturing center for Volkswagen worldwide. So Wolfsburg in Germany is the biggest. And then you go to Puebla, Mexico. They do 2,300 cars a day out of that factory. It's absolutely mammoth. But yeah, we are probably going to get the pickup truck. It's only been shown as a concept, but based on the Atlas platform. But just a concept. They haven't greenlit it or anything. Hey, Zach, how are you? I'm a student looking for a car. I like hatches, but I only ever looked at the Golf line. I heard they are not too reliable or so. Should I look elsewhere? Well, it depends. Are you buying a brand new car or you're buying a used car? I mean, if you're buying a used car, you're always buying someone else's maintenance. Did they do the maintenance? Did they look after it? Did they beat on the car? And when you get into GTIs and Golf Stars, you can get vehicles that are being beaten on. Now, one car that was surprisingly refreshing and nice is the new Corolla hatchback. And if you drive manual, it's actually a nice little car to drive. Another one is, we're speaking of Veloster. You could get a Veloster Turbo with a manual transmission. That was a nice car to drive. You could also get, the Hyundai Elantra Sport, the GT, which is the i30. So there's lots of great hatchbacks out there. Wait, if you're not in a rush, because Mazda will be unveiling the new Mazda 3 at the end of November at the LA show. So that is definitely a hatchback worth considering. David Romano says, what do you think of the design of the new BMW 3 Series? I actually had a picture of it up here, but I took it down just before we started to put something different up. Yeah, I think it's fine. It looks like a BMW. What a surprise. I mean, yeah, it looks like a BMW. I think they did a good job. It's kind of interesting to me. I'm seeing some, how do I put this delicately? Kia and Hyundai and Genesis have made some new products lately that I think are really nicely styled. And I'm starting to see some similarities over at BMW, because you know that Peter Schreier, former head designer for Audi, is overdoing a lot of German influence now with those Korean cars, and there's some similarities. They've made the air intakes bigger, the headlights sleeker. It's there's if you look at those cars, you look at the G70 from Genesis, and you look at the 3 Series, you can start to see some similarities there. But yeah, I have to see it in person. Why are German vehicles expensive to service? Well, because most German vehicles are luxury products, right? Mercedes, BMW, Audi, and Porsche, and they're a luxury product, and you get the associated luxury price tag, which is why I always say to people, if you're going to own a vehicle and you're going to have it for a long period of time, then have it under warranty as long as you possibly can. That's really the way to go, because when you have a vehicle that is out of warranty, it can get very expensive. So you have to really, here's another thing is people say, oh, I bought a, like I remember I had a boss years ago. He went out and he got a 5 Series BMW. The first tank of gas, he calls me up and he says, do I have to put premium gas in? And I'm like, don't be such a cheap ass. You just bought a premium or a luxury 5 Series BMW, and now you're nickel and diming over an extra $5 for premium gas. So go in with your eyes wide open. If you are price sensitive and price averse, don't buy them. You vote with your wallet. Buy something else. Sam says, what's your take on the Kia Soul Sport Tech? Any reason for concern about the car? The Kia Soul has proven to be an excellent car for reliability. It's a fantastic package. I love the Kia Soul. I suggest it to so many people. Absolutely, have at it. Go and get one. I sort of dismissed that last question about why is it more expensive. Their parts are more expensive. You're paying for the premium dealership, and it just seems to be part and parcel. Here's the thing. You don't have to take your car to the dealership to get it serviced. You can find mechanics that specialize in German cars that are not the dealer and are less expensive. Kia Forte or Elantra, which would you recommend? Civic versus Kia Forte versus Elantra. That's a tough one, because they all have their high and low points. I'll do the same thing I did earlier with the Golf. Civic. It's a Civic. It's been around forever. You know exactly what you're getting. You're getting the brand reputation. It's a good handling car out of the gate. Doesn't matter which one you buy, a good handling car. Great seating position. Nice interior, Apple and Android all included. You get the lane watch camera under the right mirror. It's got nice equipment. It's a good car. They've done a good job. It does have a CVT, but it's actually a pretty good one. Kia Forte, same thing. It's a really nicely finished car. They have a nice interior, same thing, nice head units with Android and Apple. It too has a CVT. I would probably give the new Forte a tip over the Civic CVT. Then you get into Elantra. The one thing it has going for it is it still, as of now, has a regular torque converter automatic transmission. So if you're adverse to driving a CVT, then the Elantra is the way to go. Now you start getting into the performance versions of it. If it was all 3 of those cars and I had my choice to which one I would pick, I would buy a Honda Civic Si, manual transmission, right around 30 grand. For me, that is a perfect commuter car. Andrew, let me just go back and jumped ahead here. There's a lot of questions coming in. All right. I'm 41, married, kids, always been a Honda guy, but it's the Type R, too young looking for me. I'm hearing lots of transmission issues with them, considering Golf R, but have never owned a VW. Thoughts? Transmission issues, I don't know. I'm not dialed into all of the web forums about the Type R. I hear that they might be coming out with a less tacky looking wing on the back, which would be right up my alley, and I'm assuming you as well. So you've got a vehicle that is a car you can drive every day, but is a little bit boy racer. The Golf R is quite the opposite. It's actually more Audi-like. It's very polished and refined and quite smooth and not edgy. And it is good over bumps, and it is a good everyday car. But I get what you're saying, and it's a bit of a leap of faith to go with a new vehicle and a new brand, especially if you've been served by a brand over all those years and they produce high quality cars. So you have to really think about it. What I suggest you do is try and get behind the wheel of both. Yeah, but I totally understand what you're saying about the Civic Type R. I think I couldn't drive it. I think I'd look ridiculous in it. I think it'd look great in a Golf R. So wait to see if they do update the rear wing. That could be a game changer. Tony's saying, don't worry about looking too young. Don't care what strangers think about what you drive. I disagree with that. Why do you think people buy fancy cars in the first place? They want to project an image to the world. It's like, I made it. I have a Mercedes. I made it. I drive a Bentley. That's exactly why people buy cars. Any verdict on two-wheel drive, half-ton pickup in winter conditions? Truck these days mostly offer four-wheel drive. If I don't go off-roading and pay for some decent tires. Well, you can do the old trick, which is back in the day, most pickup trucks were just rear-wheel drive. We're talking in the 70s and 80s. You can get good tires for it, and you can also put some weight in the back, okay? You put some sandbags or whatever in the back, load down the truck a little bit, get a little bit of weight over the rear wheels, and same thing. Now trucks have traction and stability control. Years ago, they didn't. So yeah, same thing. If you can drive in the winter. Michael says, what do you think about the new Nautilus? I haven't driven it. Mike Gurr, by the way, who we just put up a video this morning of the F-Type on the channel, is going to be test driving the Nautilus over on Vancouver Island. So yeah, stay tuned for that review. How do you think the Jeep pickup truck will do in the market? Is there an estimated release date? I don't know about the release date. It all comes down to price. The new Wrangler is so much better than the previous Wrangler. I can't overstate this enough. It is so much better than the previous model. It is night and day. It is such a nice vehicle to drive. But a lot of blowback on the comments of the Wrangler video I did on the price. And it seems to me that FCA has pushed the price up. Now, you do get a lot of money back in the resale market. They do hold their value. I think, to me, how well is it going to do? It all comes down to what the pricing is. I think that's going to be a big factor. Joe Mikey says, hey, Zach, I have a rebuilt many times, 1986 Yugo. It's really dead now. Something really cheap and reliable replacement. How about a bus pass? I don't know. Just kidding. If you just want cheap, reliable, go and buy whatever your number is. If it's $3,000, just buy a $3,000 Civic or a $3,000 Corolla. Get it inspected and drive it. That's really your best bang for the buck. Aaron says, hi, Zach. I've owned 3 Minis. 2 of them were the regular 3-door. I purchased the Countryman and the engine blew at 87,000 kilometers. Is this small SUV underpowered using the same engine as the 3-door? The Countryman is, I'm not sure what year your Countryman is, but it's got 87,000 kilometers. It's not probably the latest version, but yeah, I don't think so. I think no, I don't think it's underpowered, and probably why the engine blew is probably got nothing to do with that. BMW and Mini, of course, the same company. The latest Countryman and the latest X1 share the same platform. The BMW has a higher horsepower engine because it's BMW and they want to charge more for it. But I don't think it's got anything to do with the engine. I think it's got to do something with that mechanics. And that is a brand that has a lot of passion. It has a lot of fans and a lot of people that love the cars and come back and buy another one. It has not proven to be a very reliable brand. So people buy Minis because they want to drive a Mini, and they are fun to drive and they handle fantastically, but it's not the go-to car when you want reliability. Manual or automatic? I like manual, but I think maybe difficult on resale. Live in a small city. What do you think? Yeah, we're kind of getting to the point now, and I agree with you, that unless it's a specialty car that someone is really seeking out, like a 911 manual, right? Like some guy who wants to drive a Porsche 911 might seek out a manual, or a Mustang GT, they might want the manual. But if it's just an everyday car, I kind of agree with you. I think it's much easier to sell an automatic. Matt says, "You're a Porsche guy, Zach, so I forgive you. German automakers are selling prestige and status. They don't sell because they are objective best choice, cost, performance, value, reliability, and features." Well, I would disagree with you with Porsche, because Porsche does offer performance, reliability, and features. Value is subjective because, yeah, when you go to buy the car, yes, they're expensive vehicles, but man, they hold their value in the resale market. So in the end, there is some value. I'll give you a perfect example. I bought a Cayenne and I drove it for 6 years and sold it. And you know what the average cost per month, like between what I paid for it and what I sold it for? It worked out to $333 a month to drive a Porsche Cayenne. You try and get a Camry or an Accord for $330 a month. So it is, yeah, there can be actual value there. Hey, Zach, as a current 718 Cayman, are the current 718 Caymans and Boxsters a refresh of the 981 Gen? Do you think that there will be a new generation Cayman Boxster soon? Well, it's a heavily modified car. The track is wider. You had to make room for the engine in the back. Even though it's a turbo 4-cylinder, they actually needed more space for all the plumbing of the inlets and all that kind of stuff. And they redid the suspension. So yes, it's a reworked version of the older car, but it is a much different car. And the handling of that car, the 718, is fantastic. And the turbochargers are not the same sound, but they offer great performance. So yeah, they're good cars. They really are nice cars to drive. But for me, if I was going to buy one, I would go for the last of the flat six, just because I'm a purist that way. Okay, I am up against the clock. I want to thank everybody that tuned in. Once again, if you could follow along at Instagram, go to Motormouth_auto. And then for Facebook, go and like the page, Motormouth, car in capital letters, like the page. And if you're looking for a car, go to car, I'll get all popped up at once, Car Cost Canada, and your first search for a car, you'll get the car price, what the dealer paid for the car, any rebates, any discounted incentives, you name it, it's all there. So check that out as well. That's all the time we have for this week. I will not be here next week because I'm on the road. Be back the week after, and I'll talk to you then. Bye now. Have a great